Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Business Spotlight. My name is Megan with Action Coach, and today I have the opportunity to speak with Ben, who is with Retriever Medical. And, here at Action Coach, we love to just connect with people in our communities and beyond and really see what opportunities are out there with, ourselves and together and really improve on our growth personally and professionally. So thank you again, Ben, for coming.
Thanks, Megan, for the invitation. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just want to hop right into it and just please introduce yourself again, and kind of what led you here, starting in military and then coming into your current business.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that question. So early on, let's start with college. I went to school at University of Utah, and I went there to join the Air Force ROTC. I always had a vision and passion to fly planes. And so we went into the ROTC program there for the Air Force, upon which when I graduated, top of my class, I went to a place called Euro-NATO Joint Jet Pilot Training out of Wichita Falls, Texas. And there you train and fly with the NATO countries. The whole idea that if you get into war, you have a lot of similar common training and traits, so that when you get into a war, a comprehensive battle, you're able to fight more effectively together. So we did that. I did that for a while. Then I exited the Air Force and then got into to business. Started off, interestingly enough, at a company called Milliken & Company, which was basically a textile company in the South. And at the time when the Mirage was built, they actually got the first carpet contract. So what I did was I was providing post-sale service for the carpet and the appearance. And we know within the community of Vegas and the hotel industry, appearance, image is everything, and they spend big bucks on that. So early on in my career, I did that for about 2.5 years. And Milliken was a Malcolm Baldrige Award winner, and they would provide 30 to 40 hours a year of continuing education for free. So jump on that. I think we'll be able to talk about that a little bit more. So from there, I said, I want to go back and get an MBA. And this is an important story here. This is an important point I'd like the audience to think about. Is I went and I applied and I got into a lot of programs. And then my dad, parents sometimes could be the wisdom barometer in your life, comes back and says, well, you can go to MBA program full-time and pay the full freight for 2 years, right? At the time I had a job. So then you forego your salary. You go full-time, that's the opportunity cost. And then there's some return on investment somewhere down the road. And he goes, or you could work at a company that pays for your MBA and do it while you're working and still maintaining your salary and commissions. So I took the latter. So thanks to my dad, I think I made a good move. Yeah. So I pursued an MBA. I joined on with a company called Edwards Life Sciences to get into medical devices. And they in part paid for my MBA. And then another company startup called Cardiothoracic Systems, which pioneered beating heart surgery. So the heart keeps going, as opposed to putting the patient on a heart-lung machine where it stops the heart. And so they paid for the rest of it. And then I just continued on developing my career path to where I'm at today, where I've been now in about 6 startup companies, 3 of which I've been a CEO of. And it's been a lot of fun, a lot of risk, a lot of fun at the same time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And really, I know just on my side too, from the coaching aspect and being an entrepreneur myself, there's a lot that people don't know or don't realize when it comes to entrepreneurship. And I feel like a lot of people see the shiny parts of it and, oh, you get the freedom and you get the this and then that, but they don't really see the work, all the behind the scenes aspects of how you got there and how long it took, maybe how many failures there were along the way, and still that persevering through that. So I would love for you to speak more into that aspect as well.
Yeah, I think the opportunity in business is learn as fast as possible. The whole goal isn't to sit in a job forever. Life's about growth. Think about when you're a young pup and you learn to crawl, then to walk. That's a metaphor for life. It's always growth and progression. And I think sometimes adults get into a certain phase in life and it stops. And the thing that brings me the greatest passion is always developing the mental acuity, the mental approach, and my knowledge of things in general. And so I think for people in their career, the mentality's got to be, I'm fully responsible for where I get in my career. Nobody's at fault. If someone's abusive as a boss or whatever, that's your choice to stay there or leave. And I understand there's extenuating circumstances, but it's about being proactive, learning as much as you can, as quickly as you can, taking full ownership and accountability for the career you envision. Now, by the way, when you start off, you're not going to always know this is where I want to go. But I think the A answer is start with something. And what you find is that every job you're in builds a foundation. And if your mentality is, my thesis in life has always been growth mentality, not get comfortable. Because when you get comfortable, you atrophy, right? If I get comfortable, bodybuilder gets comfortable with the muscle, meaning he stops developing the muscle, right? I look good, so I'm good. I'm just going to sit back, sit in the couch. What happens? Everything atrophies. Everything just shrinks. And so I think in life, the opportunity is the mentality has to be, no matter where I'm at, there's always growth. There's always things I don't know, or there's always things I can do for my health or my mental health or my physical health or whatever. And just have that perspective. And I think part of that in my experience of success is who I surround myself with. I'm very, very careful.
Yes.
Who I bring in my life, who influences me, who speaks into my life, because that can have gravitational effect on where you end up 10, 15 years down the road. So this is about guarding your heart, guarding your potential, and protecting your outcome, right? Ultimately, the outcome is where you see yourself 10, 20, 30 years down the road. And, without a vision, people perish. We've heard this biblically in school and Sunday school. You got to have a vision for your life. And sometimes you're like, hey, I'm 25. I'm not sure what I want to do. Again, I'd go back to start with something. And the joy in the journey is what you learn, no matter what job you're in. Max it to the full potential, but be comfortable pivoting and moving and moving and moving. And don't stay stationary, because that's where I think people grow frustrated, get frustrated with bosses, get frustrated with the fact that, man, I've been doing this for 5 years. I'm not getting the promotion, the pay that I expect. All those things are really related to the person's sort of entropy or apathy towards what they could be doing.
Yeah, no, so I remember one time I was talking with a business owner, and so he had just actually left a current employer where he was an executive in that company, and then went off and started his own venture. And when we got the opportunity to sit down, he was like, I'm bored. I said, okay, tell me more. And he said, I feel like I've done it all. I've owned it all. I've seen it all. And I said, well, I find that hard to believe. But how like, what about it is the boredom? And so my thing is, my way of thinking is, boredom is the cancer. The moment that you're bored, that's when you've decided to stop growing. You've hit your plateau. And so what would your advice be to somebody that's at that place of, I feel like I've done it all. I feel like I've seen it all. What could there be next?
Yeah, that happens a lot. And that could be a function of burnout, or they're disappointed because they didn't get the promotion, because you don't know really what's behind that statement. I mean, to say that I've been there, done it all. Let me introduce you to Elon Musk, or let me introduce you to Warren Buffett, or anybody who's still cranking it into their later stages of life. I mean, think about Mozart. His biggest hits happened in his 90s. So, or the guy Ray Kroc that founded McDonald's, that happened in his 50s.
Yeah.
So boredom, I mean, you got to really unpack what it is, and it's really done by asking questions. But I think when people get to that point, the universe, something's telling them something's got to change, right? Like if you had cancer, you're not going to sit there and say, well, where I think Steve Jobs made a mistake, well, I'm going to try alternate forms of therapy to figure this thing out. Meanwhile, it metastasizes and turns into something that was unmanageable. So I think just like cancer, you got to be proactive. When you start feeling that way, you have to be honest as to why I feel that way, and be transparent and authentic with yourself. And maybe you failed. Maybe you didn't hit a task. Maybe you didn't have the skill set. I think it's vital to be critically honest. Critically is a key word, because if you're critical of yourself, then you can be objective. Then you can say, where are my strengths and weaknesses? Why do I feel this way? Because listen, if you took that same executive and you give him another vista to look at, another opportunity, and he can continue to grow and it's meaningful, he'll flourish. So what brings meaning in life? What gives me my passion and my power and my purpose? And then I got to continually refine that, right? And never get comfortable. I mean, it's a mindset. We live in the best of times in the United States, right? For the most part. I mean, we got a crazy economy now, but if you look at our standard of living as compared to the 20s or 30s, people are living pretty good. So sometimes it's easy to get comfortable. And that's the enemy of progress. You got to keep, look, it comes down to, what do you want? Where are you going to get, like, if you're 70, can you look back in your life and say, I owned it, I maxed it, I hit my purpose? I remember in the Air Force, we had this training when I went to the equivalent of boot camp, and they had this saying and quote I'll never forget. It said, today, I gave all I had, because anything I kept, I would have lost forever. Today's all you have. You don't know about tomorrow. So if your mindset and your mentality is health, mental, physical, I'm going to max it in balance, by the way, it can't be out of balance. And you go through that life with that perspective. I think it really adds value to your life, because I think a lot of people get to a certain stage in life, they look back, and why are they disappointed?
Yeah.
By the way, here's a key learning I'd like to share with your audience. I've been thinking about this, and people get in this trap, right? So they get to a company, and what are they trying to do in the company? They're trying to make an impression, make an appearance, be liked. They want to keep the job. They want to grow. And what happens is they get in, let's say it's customer service. They're doing that for a while. And what are they doing? Well, I got to please my boss. I got to please my peers, because we get 360 feedback, and I got to play the game. But about 10 to 15 years down the road, they're going to wake up and saying, what was I doing? I didn't grow in these years. I could have gone to this level. I didn't take the opportunity, or I was trying to people please these people. And now 15 years later, it was a glorious waste of time. Why do I say that? Because here's the ugly, honest truth about corporations. They don't care about you. They don't. What they care about is the bottom line and returns. Now, we have all these management programs, because I've been through them all, about, caring and empathy and loving. At the end of the day, if you look at what's going on with Woke and Budweiser, guess what they did to that campaign? They exited the person that initiated, because they've lost $6 billion in market cap. What does that tell you? It's about the dollars. It's about the money. It's not about the social cause. So I just would tell your audience that when you think about getting into a job, never stay comfortable, because when that business takes a turn for the worse, and not because of what you're doing, because the economy shifts or whatever, the first to go are the people. They're going to protect the outcome of the business. So I think I've always sort of driven myself in life that way. It's like, look, we have niceties, and I do like people I've worked with, but the reality, the hard truth is, I have to own my own outcome. I got to own my own training, my own development, my own effectiveness. And it's not going to be predicated upon the cultural men or the company I'm with, because they would get rid of me in a heartbeat if the conditions are right. And that's how I've always, sort of kept ahead of inevitable doom, right? Because it's always there.
Yeah.
But somehow you got to keep ahead of it.
Yeah. Well, and I think to that point too, going back to it, people do tend to get comfortable, and it's like, oh, okay, well, I created this safety net, and so now I feel safe and I feel okay. And then that's where people can start to limit what they do, because it's, well, this is okay and this works for now. But it really is it's that shift in mindset of, this works for now, but also what's next? And what are you able to control? Because to your point, yeah, the doors could close today. You could be fired today, and that's out of your control. But what have you built around yourself and for yourself in the process of that? And that's why I really love, for us as a company, we are starting to offer more trainings that aren't just for the business owner, but also for the employees, to really empower them to say, okay, give back to yourself, invest in yourself, or talk your boss into investing in you, so that not only is it going to make you good for this position now, but also just you personally as a whole, so that if you do need to shift and pivot, or when you do, you have something behind you. And I feel like it's so important, and it really is kind of that mindset of that continual student, and always wanting to learn, always wanting to grow, because again, it's when you're giving away your future to somebody else, that's the beginning of your own demise, really.
That's beautifully said. No, I can't agree with that more. And so why do companies train people? Because it's to affect and impact the bottom line. And I think with people, they have to realize at some point you're going to be 40, 50, 60, but in the 50s, it's easy to shutter those people, because it costs the business more. They're more expensive, because they know more and they have more experience.
Yeah.
And so what I've always said to my kids is, people pay on your knowledge. I mean, there's certain athletes that they'll pay on those physical skill sets, or there's certain bodybuilders that they'll pay on that basis. But for the most of us, people are paid on what they know, their knowledge. And so if you want to make more money, increase your knowledge and effectiveness, right? I mean, there's a lot of nuance in that statement, but ultimately it comes down to what you know is what people pay for, because what you know turns into, hopefully translates into effectiveness and execution of a plan, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's important. People get stuck, and it's like, what's the difference between a victim and a victor, right? It's the mindset. It's how you see the world. And the victim is really nice, because it's like a nice jelly donut, right? It's nice and creamy and comfortable, because it's easy to externally say, hey, it's that person's fault. But you just stripped your power. Your
Yeah.
power is in saying, I'm always 100% responsible, no matter what, of all my actions and my responses to stimuli. And part of growth in your career is really, how do you respond to negative stimuli? I mean, when you see really successful executives, believe me, it's like, well, they make all the money and they're really, believe me, to get there, like you said earlier, what was the path to get there? What was the burn to get there? What were the struggles to get there? And there are a lot. And part of it is when you're dealing with organizations and working with and through people, you encounter a lot of situations that are sandpaperish, major headwinds. And how do you deal with people emotionally? What is your response to a team when you're being challenged or disrespected or fill in the blank? And so part of this is the mental acuity and the mental growth and the emotional growth that's needed as we get older as an adult, because it's going to hit. Either you lose your job in your 50s and you're bitter about that, but to your point, if you have all this reservoir of knowledge and capability and effectiveness, you will get picked up. You will be sucked back in because there's a need for that level of experience. But it all starts with the person and taking that ownership.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would love you to speak more into, because you kind of mentioned it just before we started recording, but it was this idea of just leadership. And you had mentioned, also like that victim to champion kind of shift that happens within that.
Leadership again is a mindset. And you say, well, is leadership, I have a general's uniform on with 4 stars, or have a title of CEO, therefore you're a leader. No, you could just be a manager that's a total jerk, and you just kissed your way up to a certain level. Leadership is totally different. So leadership is, the difference between a leadership and a manager is if you're taking a walk and you think you're a leader and you look back and there's nobody following you, that's called a long walk. But if you take the long walk and you look back and there's a lot of people following you, that's a leader. And how do they follow leaders? Is because they set an exciting vision. They empower the people. They give to the people what the people have created. They give credence. They give credit, right? And as I run businesses, if people come up with great ideas, it's always the person's idea, and I amplify that. It's not about me as a leader. It's about the people. And that sounds tried and true, but it's trite at some level. But leadership can be when you're in your home as a 7th grader. Leadership is doing your homework, taking accountability, protecting your outcome in the grades. Leadership could be on a basketball team. You're not the best player, but you figure out where you can plug in and be the best support system, right? Leadership takes on a lot of forms. It's not just the guy out in front leading. To me, when I go through Vegas and I go through a hotel, and I always tell my wife this, I always appreciate the appearance of a hotel, because I know behind the scenes, there are thousands of people working to make that experience amazing for people, right? And so to me, those people, the people sweeping the floors and vacuuming, those are leaders. Those are people to be heralded. Those are the people to be uplifted, because that's what makes a society advance, right? Livable, right? Enjoyable. So leadership's a funny thing. And I think sometimes in our culture, people say, well, I've got to be at the front. I got to have 5 million followers, and I got to have the appearance and the trappings. But no, I would argue that leadership is in the subtlety of what you do. Leadership is what we talked about, taking ownership and responsibility for your career, right? It could also be external leadership. I have kids I need to lead, or an organization I need to lead. It can encompass a lot of different things, but I think it starts with the mindset. Again, I keep going back to that because everybody's a leader, whether they realize it or not. And sometimes they lead themselves into a ditch or a quagmire or quicksand, or sometimes they lead themselves to the penthouse, the ultimate heights of life, which starts out with a mental attitude.
Yeah.
Like, how do you see yourself? If you don't see yourself, again, why not? Reflect on it. Why not? Unpack that a little bit, because ultimately you are a leader. And if you're around people that denigrate you and degrade you and do those sorts of things, don't hang out with those people. It's real simple, because anybody could be impacted psychologically around that environment. The greatest organizations are performance-based organizations that uplift and elevate the people. Like if you look at Elon Musk, he's hard to work for, but once you're in that way, it's all about the people and giving the people credit and creating conditions that they can maximize their creativity, their talent, to the product, to the Tesla, car, to the rocket ship he's creating. It's all about that culture and environment. And you don't see Elon Musk, banging on his chest. He just creates the conditions where people can flourish. And obviously he hires very talented people. But ask yourself how those people become talented. What were the conditions? And I guarantee you, not everybody had a perfect life with 2-parent homes and everything was paid for. It's through the adversity. And this is another important point. It's through the adversity where character and commitment and traction is developed. It's not in the ease of life. And so when people are going through really difficult times and then they go back to the victim stance, they really got to say, wait a minute, if I'm going through a tough time, I mean, how is a diamond formed, right? Through coal, through heat and pressure and time. There's a gift in all of it. So people can see it that way, again, mindset, that everything I'm going through is trying to perfect my character and where I'm ultimately supposed to be. It's a fun journey. It's not woe is me and this is difficult. No, everything that's difficult is really a PhD in life. And you can actually use it as a springboard for the next thing.
Yeah, I love that point. I remember I got into an interesting conversation a while back with somebody and they asked me about regret. And they said, well, what is your stance on regret? And I said, I don't have any. And they said, well, how do you not have regret? And I said, because if I believed in regret, then that would be basically, trashing my whole existence, because it's all of the things that happened in my life, all of the choices that I've made up to this point has created this person today, has created who I am, and also is forging the path where I'm going. And so if I had regret in any of that, then that would be, just really not accepting who I am. Mm-hmm. And what I've become and where I'm going. And so that was always, an interesting conversation. And like you had mentioned before, we only have today, because we never know what's going to happen tomorrow. We're not guaranteed tomorrow. And whatever happened before, it's already happened. Right. And so it's really just, again, taking that ownership, taking that responsibility, taking the action of what can I do right now? What do I have personal control over right now to affect the change that I'm looking to have in my life? And so I really feel like that's, kind of just going into some of the things that you've spoken into. Again, it's there's a leader in everything, and you are ultimately the leader of your own life. Mm-hmm. And so it's really when you start to own that and say, yeah, okay, I am the leader. Because again, that's the mindset piece of, I can do whatever I choose to do. Right. And there's so much power in that.
I love what you said about regret, because regret's a weird construct. It's really about learning and growth. It's like, wait a minute, so I'm 18, I made some choices that I'm supposed to be depressed about my whole life. No, you got some experiences along the way. And I think, if people look at it this way, and I've used this analogy before, what is depression? Looking into the past. What is anxiety? Looking into the future. What's the present? A gift. It's a flow state. Stay in the state. I'm sorry, what's the present? It's a gift. Stay in the present. That's all you have. And I think if you think about this analogy of a salmon, why don't I like salmon? I mean, they're good to eat, but as a salmon spawns and goes upstream, that's a lot of work, right? He's going against the stream. And what's his demise? A freaking grizzly bear is going to eat him, right? So who wants to be the salmon? I'd rather be the dolphin, where what does a dolphin do in the ocean? They see a wave starting to develop and they flow with the wave. Mm-hmm. They flow with nature. And so a lot of advertising and a lot of songs and music, and that's why I say to people, be careful of what you listen to. So in other words, why would I care about who's in my life? Well, equally, I care about what I put in my mind. So let's talk about songs. Mm-hmm. Songs sell so well. Why? Because they trap people in a past emotional state. Mm-hmm. They're stuck in an emotional story of the past that they remember, that was meaningful, that was impactful, good or bad. And so what does that do? That creates a state of negative energy. Mm-hmm. What do people do with that? Well, that state of negative energy, they go to drugs, alcohol, sex, pornography, fill in the blanks. And people understand, and the CIA started a lot of this stuff in the 60s, not to go off too much down a rabbit hole, but they have to understand that people are being programmed. So if you feel a certain way, understand it's by design. It's designed to put you in a certain place. So I'm very careful the music I put in my mind, 100%. Like, why do I want some non-performer who may be making a lot of money, but has values and things that I know would be harmful to me and other relationships? Why would I entertain that? And this is not to be moralistic, it's just to be practical. How do you have a headspace that's positive, energetic, and can take on challenges and stressors? This is what I'm talking about. So the past is, when people focus on the past, that's why they're depressed. And to your point, you can't change it. And when people focus on the future and worry, that's anxiety. What does that do? But if you go in the flow state of, all I know is today, I can go outside, it's sunny, I can appreciate the environment, the earth, the firmament, whatever, and just stay in that way. And no, listen, to your audience, tell me what percent of what you worried about has come true. Tell me a point in your life that you haven't been taken care of, that you went homeless. Most people are going to say they never experienced it. Now, they may say, well, I'm not as successful as I'd want to be. Well, that's the problem. Expectations is the killer of joy.
Yes.
Comparison to other people is a killer of joy. Don't do it. And right, people want to go around the Range Rovers and be the person. Don't get trapped in that. That's why it's so important to be aware of who you are and what you want.
Yeah.
Because if you get trapped in those things, you're just a ping pong getting bounced around. It's about taking ownership of your mental space and saying, why am I focused on the past? Deal with it, fix it. Why am I worried about the future? Because you've lost your faith and your belief. All I got is now, and working with your organization, getting the training, getting around the right people, the positive energy. I'm not talking about Pollyannic positive. I'm talking about a strategy that will move you forward in your career.
Yeah.
But it's there, and the mindset is there. But it's about how people see where they're at today. And I can tell you, you can tell me as well. There's a lot of people that are down the dumps. It's like, wait a minute. That's why what you said about regret is prescient, is so powerful. You ought to bottle it up, by the way, because what is regret? It's a crazy word. Now, if you were a Hitler, you should have some regret. Right? There's some people that, is regrettable. But for the average person just trying to live life, it's really a learning lesson. It's an opportunity for growth.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you, like you had mentioned before, it's that diversity. It's that, going through those rough points, like that's what really makes you, because it's how you navigate that through life. And it's that pressure that's being applied, and the pressure is being applied because you're ready for it. Maybe you don't think you're ready for it. Maybe you don't know you're ready for it, but you are, because that's your opportunity being given to you to say, okay, now what? What are you going to do this time with this? And so to really just wrap up, I mean, I could do this all day long with you. We can do just like a whole day podcast. But I would just love to hear, just being in your position now and speaking into either other executives, that are at your level, or just people coming into this space. Like, what would be your one piece of advice to get them through, to maybe see what they haven't seen before that's there for them?
I think when people get more and more successful, ego can become a real challenging thing, right? So for the executives, like I don't have purpose, or I've sort of hit the ceiling. Part of that's an ego statement in my mind. And I think with more success, what you got to be able to manage and control is the ego, because that's where people go to, right? There's a slight they had in their life. So I'm going to be successful. I'm going to build my house on my career, my success, and how people think about me. And therefore, when I arrive, I've made it. And then you realize when you arrive, it didn't have the same meaning as you thought it would. And so now you're disillusioned and you have an identity crisis, right? What's an identity crisis? It's like if I built my whole self-identity and my wealth, my looks, my title. Well, when those goes away, what happens? I got an identity crisis. So I think for leaders coming into it, or that are well ensconced in their position, I think it's about being curious and open-minded, and then humble. Always stay humble. Always know there's more to know. And I've learned a lot watching Elon Musk interview, because no matter the dumbest question he's asked, he's always curious. Or when he's trying to understand, someone says, hey, I'm thinking this, he'll stop and listen and analyze and think about it. Because even though he's very smart, he recognizes that somebody may have an insight or perspective that hasn't been considered. And for a guy that's close to the wealthiest person on the planet, that speaks to humility, and that speaks to curiosity, and that speaks to open-mindedness. And I think you always got to go through that cycle. Stay humble, because it can be taken from you today. You could be in a car accident and you're gone. And all you have is a carbon footprint that nobody will, for the most part, remember. In fact, your family will sort of remember it, but 5 years down the road, not as much. So if we just keep that in perspective, that life is brief, impact can be strong, and just keep it in perspective, when you get into the job, it doesn't define you. It's just a job you're doing. And then it comes back to, what is your basis for being here? Is it spiritual? Do you have a belief in a higher power? Because I think getting connected to that will amplify your ability to perform. Because why are we doing all this? Just to make money and accumulate things? You remember Siegfried and Roy? They had this big house that was sick crazy. And I always thought, well, why didn't they just keep it as like a museum piece? Well, guess what? They bulldozed it and they got rid of it. Just think about that for a second. Think about where they were at in the 80s.
Yeah.
In terms of the hierarchy of society and power and prominence. And now where are they at?
Yeah, sold it all.
Just a perspective. That's all. Keep it in perspective.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, thank you so, so much for today. And yeah, like I said, we can go on forever. Just all the insight, all the advice is so impactful, and I know our listeners absolutely love it. So thank you again for
Thanks,
coming.
Megan. I enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And is there anything else that you want to share? Any ways for people to get in touch with you and connect with you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn under Ben Bobo, or I have an email at ben.w.bobo@gmail.com. Feel free to reach out. I like to share what I know, and it could be 100% wrong, but it's what I know. So for me, it's 100% right. So it's all
Yes.
relative. So,
I love
feel free if they want to reach out. And I say, just look at your life as an accelerator and just create the construct where you can balance it so you don't burn out, but you maximize your potential here on earth. Because I think that's ultimately what people want.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you again so much. And for all of you out there, that was another Business Spotlight.